All right. Hello, everyone.
Yes, welcome to the 14th Q&A. And
as usual?
Yes, as usual, let's kind of fire questions in Q&A. Any updates from us, I think, from our perspective? I guess, we're looking towards the next 5.7 release coming out in the next few weeks, which the SDK and runtime. 5.7. 5.7 release. 5.7 release. I think that's one of the main updates from us. Any other updates you can think about?
No.
Yeah. So, okay, I guess on that note, I'm sure we'll think of some other things to talk to you about as questions arise. Let's start firing away and get your questions answered.
All right. So the first one we see there from Hans is using the default and then immediately resolving returns cached endpoints. So first of all, that API is a little bit low level, and what happens is that there are addresses that are getting pushed to all the nodes all the time, and so if you're in a really racy condition where services are moving around all the time and you're just pulling out whatever happens to be in that cache immediately, then you might get old addresses, but that's just a race condition. So what we expect would be that there's an API that you can use that automatically passes in the old result and says, yep, this old result is old, give me the updated information, and then that invalidates the caches along and returns you the new one. It's interesting that you say the stale results stick around hours, and also when you say shut down, I presume that doesn't mean like deleted, that just means it moved around. What that really feels like is that you're not passing back in that old result, and so you're just getting the prior value that was in the cache. So until you tell us to invalidate that cache, it won't get invalidated. There's also higher order APIs that we'd more expect you to be using these days. If you go check, I think has the standalone one been updated to use DNS and the
the two hard ones you can use is there's the reverse proxy.
Yeah.
The reverse proxy is a very straightforward way of building out a URL where you can do a local host call, usually it's 19081, and then give a URL that you formulate that the reverse proxy forwards on your behalf.
Yeah, the reverse proxy takes care of all of this cache invalidation and retry and all that stuff.
So, have a look at the reverse proxy if that can take care of it. But what should happen with the service partition resolver is that there are, as Matt said, there are notification messages that get sent. So, actually, there shouldn't be more than about a 10-second delay from old ones.
That would even be really.
And even that's a bit of a long time. So, but otherwise, there's for resolution across things a DNS for stateless services, and then the reverse proxy we should look at.
Yeah. I'm going to put a link to the reverse proxy inside the communication window here as soon as my machine decides to join the meeting.
Okay, we actually have an earlier question from Stefan Berard at the top of the list there as well.
Oh, okay. Did we miss this one?
No, I don't think we have it.
We don't have it.
Read
No.
it or repost it. Sorry,
With Paolo saying interesting question.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's not the actual question.
I'll repost it.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, it looks like we didn't join the stream in time, so we're missing that one.
Right, and so next one, an active service going through an active proxy is calling through an actor through proxy, still proxied call, but does not go through. But does it go through the network channel? Yes. Any call made to an actor through an active runtime, while a call is going on, any changes made to the active state management through set state async. Some of them are cached. I don't know the answer to this one.
I'm sorry, my question got garbled. Like I think I pasted two questions in one step. Okay. So the first question is basically within the same machine, is it still going through the local network stack?
Yes.
Yes, it is
a local call. Yeah. So
it has no idea. Yeah. It doesn't presume locality.
Yeah. Calls between actors are always over a network, even if it's a local.
Yeah, network. I mean the TCP stack might do something clever and not actually put it on the wire, right? But as far as the actor proxy is concerned, it's sending it out to the wide world.
By the way, we just posted a great video, which we'll dig out and post, done by Vaz and other engineers on the team, about how an update or about when to use actors, what are the best practices behind them all, and what are the best scenarios to use them all. Because as your thing points out, doing calls between a graph of actors means that you have network calls between them all, and so one actor calling another actor can be very detrimental. So they're better used in scenarios where things are isolated. So this little video, I'll dig it out. We just did it.
Cool. Yeah, and the second question is very specific to the actor state management through the actor state manager. Okay. That the documentation explicitly states that it has two distinct methods: set state async and save state async. And the model, the usage pattern is that the author who's writing an actor code will just call set state async. Whereas when the call from the actor returns, since it's kind of being proxied through the actor runtime, the runtime will then call the save state async to actually write it to the actual physical store. So the question is that while the actor code is running, let's say I write my own actor, and within a function I call set state async 3 times. So until this function call returns and the actor runtime call the save state async, is the state not replicated around actors per the documentation? Because when I tried it, it works, but it works.
Yeah, it's not, as far as I know, it's not replicated until the save actually happens. It does actually have an implication depending upon which state provider is underneath, whether it's the in-memory one, the persisted one based on the collections, or the persisted one based on the old KVS stuff. There will be differences in when the things replicate. Most of the in-memory one and the KVS one, as far as I know, would only replicate at the end. There's a possible optimization, if it's using the dictionary-based one, to replicate on every operation, but still those operations would not be visible. They wouldn't be unlocked on the secondaries. So in practicality, you won't see anything on the secondaries until that that method actually completes and everything gets unlocked. So do you understand what I'm saying? It might be replicating, but those changes won't be visible.
No, you can see them. I tested this. So this is what I did.
See them where?
Within an actor call, I actually spawned a thread so that I do not want the call to go back, because once it goes back to the actor proxy, the actor runtime will call save. I spawned the thread, and in the thread, after a while, I let the thread sleep so that now there is no actor call going on. I actually call set state. And right after that, I put up a breakpoint and I blow up the service. I blew the service. The replica got it, and I was able to call the replica and fetch the new value.
But are you looking at it at the state manager level, or are you looking at it through another actor method?
Through another actor method. So
and your first actor method has completed, right?
Yeah, but it didn't. It was not the one which actually called set state. So here's the use case.
I think we need to see your code, because also we don't normally.
Yeah, post us your code.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a bit hard to describe this all. Let's
get a GitHub issue open on this one.
Yeah,
that's
can you create a GitHub issue, put your code, and we'll look at it that way?
Yes, this is what I'll do, so that you guys can at least look at it.
Yeah, that would help.
Otherwise, it gets a bit
sure.
hard.
Trying to hold it all in my head is a little tricky.
Sure, thanks.
We're more than happy. We'll definitely do a follow-up through GitHub and things.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay. So details on the 5.7 release. Well, let's talk about what's in 5.7. We can talk about some of the things inside there that were
major things that are coming.
Major coming.
Yeah. So well, the main thing that's coming is we will have a preview release where you can run stateful service fabric services within Windows containers. So we'll support running reliable stateful services, as well as stateless services, as well as actors inside Windows containers. So that is the big release that is coming in 5.7. We are doing a whole bunch of networking improvements and stuff. This is mostly plumbing, which you're not going to be able to immediately use right now. But this will enable things like isolated VNets per application in the future as well.
Yeah, but in the 5.7 release, we're going to have what we're calling open network.
Yeah, so we're going to have something called open network. So each container gets its own IP. Again, this is only just a step forward in terms of this will let us do in the future is it will let us actually have stable IPs per container. So instead of having dynamic IPs per container every time there is a failover or something, once a container gets an IP, then you can always use that IP to communicate with the container, even if it moves nodes.
This is what I mentioned in the build talk we did earlier this year. So
Yeah.
there's basically there's 2 additional networking modes within containers. One where across the cluster, every container will get its own IP address, and it'll be a stable IP address. So it fails over between machines. You can use DNS to call between them.
Yeah, so you're going to see some of these here, but as I said, like the end-to-end scenarios are going to light up probably the release after 5.7. So in a couple of months is when you're going to be lighting up. You can use isolated VNet per application. You can use the stable IP per container and so on.
But the actual okay, so great. So then the second part of this question then was Chaco.
One more. On the Linux side of things, 5.7 will bring many of the container features on par between Windows and Linux. So things like DNS support and compose support, which are there on Windows today but not on Linux, those gaps will be addressed and it'll be brought pretty much on par with Windows.
Okay,
silver durability. That's the question.
So silver durability, Chaco. Silver durability.
Silver durability is
Chaco just got back from vacation, so
let me answer
aging.
it for you.
Yes.
Okay, so silver durability. So it's available now, yes?
So it's available for anyone who creates a new cluster or wants to modify an existing cluster to silver. That's available today. So and then my documentation to that end is stuck in review. So that's where I think it is.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the silver durability, it allows you to have full durability characteristics on any VM type, on the understanding effectively that in order to do upgrades to make it safer in terms of those when you do an update, you think the rollout times, do more safety checks around that node, and hence make sure that you maintain the state of any application state you're running inside the node. So as a consequence for the safety side of things, you will see your upgrades take a little longer.
Yeah, so silver basically it has integration with the underlying infrastructure. So that is what you're getting. And then unlike gold, which needed a full node, this will not need a full node. So you can enable it on any VM. So they are like Mark was saying, this also comes with some responsibilities from your end. Like for example, compared to bronze. So the responsibility is being that when you get a state transition or like your replica gets a transition state, you absolutely have to react to it very quickly. Otherwise, you're going to wait for it. So these are things which I've written down in the documentation. Look for it. It's available today.
So just to clarify, when I look in the portal, at least, I don't see the silver durability.
Correct. So portal is it comes only after complete documentation out there. Portal is meant for folks who are doing it very cheap and dirty. You can certainly use ARM today.
Yeah, if you generate your ARM from the portal and change it to silver, it'll work. It's been there actually for about
2 months.
About 2 months actually.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, deleting active state. Our actors store some state. When we delete the actors, do not delete the state, or at least we're not seeing evidence of this.
When you say delete the actors, you were using like the actual delete actor, like that particular actor individual?
He's not on. He's not on that.
Oh, I see.
Okay. All right. Then, well, it should when you delete an actor, it removes.
Yeah, it should be cleaning it up, but it's probably lazy. So it's doing it in chunks.
We'll come back to that question and again. If it should, the answer it should be.
Yeah, it should clean it up eventually. If it's not doing it eventually, then it either might still be in use somewhere, which is why it depends on whether or not it was just garbage collected or whether it was actually deleted.
Yes. Okay, this is a good one, Chaco. For volatile environments, such as developmental testing, is it possible to safely stop a service cluster without losing the data? In my experience, when I stop the cluster by simply stopping the VM skill set, it seems to lose all the data, app deployments, images, and everything else. Yes. I read that before stopping a node, you need to first disable it. So I tried that, but I don't think. So I think the scenario is, I find no effective way to stop a cluster.
There is no way to stop a cluster and restart it later. So answer to that question is, whether it's volatile, non-volatile, whatever else your environment may be, never stop a cluster. There is no safe command I can tell you which will give you the ability to stop, pause a cluster and restart it.
I mean, and that's because we keep all of the state on the actual machines, and when you stop the machines, Azure tends to reclaim
Yeah.
those machines.
So when you say the VM scale set, you seem to stop the VM scales. Just basically what stop really means is basically just giving up that VM. And then when you start it again, it actually gets you whatever is there on the OS drive, but not on the rest of the drives. So there is an FAQ as well, which I posted on the same question. So I would encourage you to read it.
Okay, any further news on Service Fabric backup service for the reliable collections? It was mentioned a couple of months ago as a system service.
I think you should see a preview coming out in the next month or so.
So it's in
5.7
development
or-
still,
Yeah.
where the idea is that the backup and restore service backs up. There's a walkthrough of all the partitions, calls the backup and restore APIs, and pushes it to Azure Backup Research Service. We were hoping to have it out before now, but it's looking like it's going to be another month or so.
Yeah.
So I guess we're targeting towards the end of August.
Yeah.
Is that,
So
that
probably
would be
around the
fair?
time 5.7 comes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
5.7 or at the latest, it would GA in the fall, probably.
Yeah.
Yes. What's the story for disaster recovery for Service Fabric clusters? If clusters would go pop, what are the operations to get one back up and running again? So I think.
So there's two ways we think about dealing with DR, and there's a doc already on this that I'm also working on updating. So you'll hear some of this again if you go read that specific document. But there's a whole bunch of things you can do with regarding your cluster topology that make the cluster going down less likely. So it depends a lot on why. Usually when we don't usually see clusters fail, frankly, but when we do, it's usually because of some unexpected hardware or environment problem that causes the entire, say, networking stack to collapse or all of the machines to get deprovisioned or something like that. When that kind of thing happens, we typically see a new cluster get provisioned, or you can wait for the existing one to come back. And then there's a restoration process where your services get triggered to restore from their backups. If the cluster is recovered in place, and that does depend upon, again, the type of failure, then Service Fabric will automatically recover your services. One of the ways that we think about DR is avoiding the disaster in the first place. So if you're concerned about all of the hardware disappearing in a particular Azure region, you can always run the cluster across a wider scope and then avoid those single regional types of blips. But this is a big topic, but the general pattern is avoid as many disasters as you can. If the disaster was some operational failure, like you deleted the stateful service and that deleted all of the state underneath it, or all of the hard drives caught on fire at the same time, then it's typically a backup and restore type situation where you create the service again and then have it do a restore from its backed up state.
There's a backup and restore on the state of the application itself.
Right.
Yes, and then on the cluster itself, on the application itself. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. We're also working towards looking at improving geo-replication, geo-clusters, yes?
Right, making that more of a mainline scenario.
Yeah, so you'll see we're spending a lot of time thinking about geo-clusters, as you've seen inside like Cosmos DB and these other ones. Then we'll make that just general purpose as we go forward, because effectively they built on the technology that we used. Okay, I need an opinion advice on a couple of problems. I had a few hours ago. The local PC went into sleep mode. At wake up, the actors lost their state. Is this normal? Were they volatile actors or were they persistent actors?
Yeah.
If they were volatile actors, then yes. If they were persistent, then no.
They were persistent.
It's also possible that did the cluster reset at any point was a new cluster provision, because that would also rewrite the local stores.
Well, but
It shouldn't have. I'm
it
just
shouldn't have.
asking.
If your laptop goes into sleep mode and comes out again, it should all recover nicely. So I'm surprised that. It sounds like you had some other problems as well. Took a few minutes for debugging an active method at some point.
Well, okay. So if you had the debugger attached and you slept it and then you woke it back up, I don't know that the debugger does a really good job of reattaching everything in that situation. I mean, it should, but I have seen issues before where remote debuggers or debugging sessions get screwed up in that sort of hibernate restore scenario.
when you stopped the debugger and restarted again, was the cluster
Well,
running happily?
most of the time when he's going to do that, it's going to relaunch everything anyway, and that will also wipe out the state.
Yeah.
Right. If it's an F5 default behavior, it's going to detach the debugger, delete the application, delete all the services, and then create them again, which would also wipe out the state. So it feels more like debugger or something like that happened. You're correct in that normally you would expect the state to still be there. The question is, why can't you see it in this particular case? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but there are two separate problems. The sleep mode, it was without the debugger. It was just the computer went to sleep, and then when I wake up, I lost the state, and that's one problem. Then later,
can I ask a question? How did you determine that you lost the state in that case?
Because all of the data that I have in my application was virgin. There was nothing. I mean, all the collection they were empty. Everything was lost in my actors at the wake up. This is after the wake up. The computer went to sleep. When I wake up, I couldn't find any data. And then after a few hours, I was debugging an actor method, and it was the logic was very complicated. So I took a long time debugging, let's say 3 minutes, stepping on each line. At some point, I went to step on the next line, and everything was wiped out. The debugger was no stack trace, nothing. I mean, I took too long, and the actor method went in timeout, I believe.
Yeah, that feels like it might have been actor garbage collection that somehow stepped in underneath you. But the first one is more concerning to me. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. So could be that I'm using an old Service Fabric SDK. I should upgrade, but I didn't so far because it was working fine. So I still have something like 5 months ago. I did upgrade. Yeah. So maybe I should try it.
And what version of Visual Studio?
The 2015.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the tooling has gotten a lot better, so it's possible you're seeing some interaction between
I should
them.
upgrade. I didn't because I was building the software, busy with and it was working fine. So I never. But I know I always remind to myself I should try everything with the.
Try with the latest, please.
And there were for a while there some. So Service Fabric does care about the operating system, and so if the operating system was asleep previously for a long time, there were bugs or issues that would cause Service Fabric to think that those nodes were all dead and reset them, because that's what we do in production when the user mode goes away on us. And so there were bugs related to that have also been fixed, so that they don't happen on your local dev box.
Upgrade.
So it feels like you're in some combination of these things.
Yeah, okay. I will try with the new software, maybe in a virtual machine on Azure so that I don't break anything on my local machine, and then I will upgrade everything.
That's the thing people do, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
No
Okay.
problem.
Do actor events use reliable messaging, or is it fire and forget?
Fire and forget. Fire and forget.
Well,
They are.
Yeah, we talking about timers?
No. Like actor.
Just
These are actor events where you go actor event, and then an event shows up based on the actor sending you something. Yeah, those are strictly fire and forget.
Yeah.
There is some basic retry sent where the TCP connection fails or something like that. It'll retry, but they're not reliable messaging.
Yeah.
Right? They're not exactly once. They're not in order.
Okay, what the heck is Service Fabric group? New Service Fabric group. We've never really talked about this. Well, I mentioned it very briefly. It's just a technology that we developed several years ago that allowed you to have a collection of services that could share the same replica.
Really, if you don't care about it, we should have removed it before we GA'd. It's a really old thing from before there were reliable collections. And so if you wanted to have 2 different dictionaries in the same service, conceptually, right? Today, that's easy. You just get or add 2 different dictionaries and you use it. Before, we had this limitation where there was only really 1 collection per service. And so if you wanted to have 2 collections and do work between them, you had to have 2 services, but then how do you make sure they're in the same service process? How do you make sure that there's transactions across them, whatever? So that was an old thing that we used to fake it so that you could have those types of scenarios. Now you just use the collections and you get all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Docker Compose. So upgradable Docker Compose will come end of September. And the story around Docker Compose is that, yeah, we're going to be making it production ready around that time as well.
Yeah, we're targeting release at the end of September, yes?
Yeah.
For Docker
GAing
Compose,
and
GA.
providing upgradable upgrade support on Docker Compose apps.
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback on that. People are liking the Docker Compose, and so we're just making sure that we run through lots of different scenarios there. Okay. How to continue running a background process in run async after Service Fabric decides to complete run async by signaling a cancellation token. Currently forced to throw an unhandled exception in my service is restarted. Well, that's
not really what run async is for. I mean, what we're saying is that within run async, you should be doing the work that the primary is doing. When we're canceling it, we're saying that you should cancel any work that the primary is doing. If you had something that what you wanted to be always running, regardless of whether it was a primary or a secondary, you can kick that off elsewhere. There's an override called open. You could kick it off there. You could kick it off as your constructor, though those aren't usually async. So depending upon what you're doing, it may not fit there. But run async is really for work that the primary is doing that the primary should stop doing and needs to stop doing before it transitions.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd pick one of those other overrides.
Sorry, and the overrides were at the constructor?
Sorry, we couldn't quite hear you.
The overrides are the constructor or?
Open async is another API that should exist.
Open async, right? Okay, and that will survive a. What sort of events will that survive?
As long as the replica exists.
As long as one of the.
Yeah,
right.
There's a corresponding close call that I think you see.
Yeah, there's open and close, and then run. Run gets, when you get a cancellation token, that means that this particular replica is no longer going to become primary, and it's going to move over It's going to move over to a secondary. But open survives the lifetime of the.
And is
replica.
open available in stateless service?
Yes. Yeah, stateless.
Brilliant. Okay.
Stateless just says open, run, close.
Brilliant.
So stateful, but it has one more.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Yeah. What is the background task? Just out of curiosity.
It's polling a database and then sending notifications. So it's just like
that's
database
a
watcher.
stateless service, and you want that just happening all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for run, that's the same. Run async is canceled in stateless services when we're shutting that particular service instance down. It doesn't make a huge difference for a stateless service, the difference between open and run.
Yeah,
so you can think of run in a stateless service as we start run when we would call open, and we cancel the token when we would call close. Right? That it's just a simplified single API for it, right? So it only really makes a difference for the stateful ones where the replica, the object stays around when you make it not the primary, right? That's when it would be interesting to have a background thing. But if the workload is stateless, then run async is exactly the right place to put it.
So that's still.
Does that mean I need more than one replica for my stateless service?
Yeah, I mean, if you shut your stateless service down and that's the only one that's running, you're not going to have any other ones calling.
Well, right. So as long as I'm in run async in stateless and I have more than one replica, I'm fine.
Yeah, but you're fine also if you had one. Like the only reason you would see that.
I think he's probably having a scenario. Are you having a scenario where you're wanting to make sure the database is always there?
I want to make sure that the background processor is always running, because when what I've noticed is that run async will finish gracefully, and it just stands up. The service is still standing up, and my polling has stopped.
So you're returning from run async. Just don't do that, right? So you do a lot of the samples show basically run async starts. You go while the cancellation token isn't canceled. I do my background thing, and that's some async task that I just spawn off, and it runs forever.
But that's what I do. But I found that I get the cancellation token gets signaled, and the operation task completion exception escapes
If that cancellation token is getting canceled, it means we're shutting down that service instance where it currently is and probably moving it somewhere else, for example. So it'll come back up. We don't just cancel it after some amount of time or anything like that. There's some other life cycle event that's happening. And if you've said to us, hey, Service Fabric, run my stateless service, there's one instance of it. Unless you've told us to delete that service or shut it down or stop it or anything like that, even if we shut down this one, it's going to start up somewhere else. So maybe there's some lifecycle event that you're not expecting that's coming in somehow.
Yes.
And telling it to shut down,
Yes.
where somebody's calling delete service or something like that. But that's really the only time when we would shut down that service.
I suppose I can help myself by ensuring that there's more than one instance. I can help myself by ensuring that it survives. Yeah.
But that if something is calling delete service on him, then the same thing's going to happen.
No, I think what maybe you're saying is that there's a scenario where you always want to be looking at this database and having, if one gets shut down, you still want something else to do the processing on the database.
And even if he had just one,
yeah,
if we moved it for some legitimate reason, it would start up somewhere else.
I know. Yeah.
So that would be a couple seconds.
Maybe he can handle more than one. Maybe you can handle more than one calling your database, can you?
Well, I think I'll have more than one replica, but I have, as it stands, I have a while true inside the run async, and I'm hoping that if ever that while true is broken out of, then that would then ensure that the service is restarted. By virtue of that, then if an unhandled exception escapes the run async, then that will
the service will get restarted.
Yeah, it's just that I didn't prefer the service to be restarted from that unhandled exception.
Well, we have to, because at that point we don't know the state of the object, right? We don't know whether or not that service is healthy or not, so we kill it and then restart it.
Okay.
Generally, the recommendation is you catch anything that you understand. So if it's just some business logic where, say it's database not found, you just want to trap that, catch it, maybe sleep a few minutes because maybe that database has just blinked and it'll come back in a minute, right?
Finally, my final question is, you mentioned stateful service. If I was to convert this to a stateful service and utilize the open async, would I be better off doing that, or?
No, it would have. You still want to run async is probably still the right place for it. It's really just about figuring out why you're getting that cancellation, because it's
you mentioned open. You mentioned open async.
It's another place, but it's for stateless services it doesn't matter, and for stateful services it's not where you would put this particular piece of work.
Fine. Okay. Clarity there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have to run. So I saw like a few questions. So I'll just answer those questions before I leave. So George asked, is a single service fabric cluster containing Windows and Linux nodes on the roadmap where you can use placement constraints for OS-specific workloads? The answer is yes. It's probably going to be end of this year. Then I saw another question where, can't see it anymore, but when are we going to support running containers, Windows containers on a service fabric cluster on Windows 10 machines? So this should happen end of September. The release end of September should have the support for Windows 10, where not only will we let you run the Windows containers on your Windows 10 machine, but we will also provide you with an inner loop debugging experience through Visual Studio. So that is being worked on. And there was one other question that I saw. When is GA for Linux? It's going to be end of September. Any better preview coming? Yes, there's going to be a preview coming. 5.7 preview is going to come probably sometime middle to end of next month. And we might have one more preview before we GA end of September. There's another question. What was it? Capability to develop for Service Fabric on Linux in an IDE on Windows. So you can, there's nothing that prevents you from using Eclipse on Windows and installing the plugin and developing Java applications or whatever you want. Even otherwise, even using Visual Studio, if you're actually creating some .NET code, or any other guest executable, there's nothing that prevents you from deploying that to a Service Fabric on Linux cluster. And there's a bunch of other questions which I think
he's trying to ask a question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hi. This is Ruksar from GP Mumbai. Yeah, GP Mumbai. So we have cloud services. We host a WCF service in worker role. We have REST endpoint exposed to the service bus. So we are targeting to moving from worker role to the microservices. So we are able to host WCF services successfully without an issue. But we are facing a lot of issue in hosting REST point through the service bus in microservices.
Okay, hang on.
Is it possible in microservices through the service bus?
So do you mind putting that in the IM window?
Put it in the IM window.
Because we are not able to hear you clearly.
Or the GitHub issues, because that one sounds more long running.
Yeah, or in the GitHub issues, if you can put it there, and if you put it in the IM window or the GitHub issues, we'll get to that.
We should continue to do these in order. I can answer your questions.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
I can answer your questions.
Let me put my
Put it in the window. We're doing these in order.
Short my questions actually.
Yeah, put your question. We're doing these in order. We're going back to where we were again. Okay.
After Manny jumped us around randomly.
Well, right. Order is easier. Auto scaling. If I have 2 instances of microservice, it requires 2 instances to handle this. Right now, auto scaling is on VM scale sets. Mindspawn puts it on all nodes.
Yep. So today we would say use -1 to put it on all the nodes, and then auto scaling would scale up the number of VMs, and when the VMs got created, it would automatically create more service instances.
Yeah.
If you wanted to run more densely in that scenario, where for some reason the VMs aren't actually utilized, but you want to add more instances, then the only way to do it is to watch that yourself and then call the same create service APIs that would dynamically create more service instances.
Yeah, I mean, maybe your question is there's auto scaling of VMs and there's auto scaling of apps. We've shown an example before in our docs about how you can auto scale your app based on.
There was actually, if you go back in the community Q&A a few weeks, there was a guy who presented a service that watches a whole bunch of different things in the cluster and makes decisions about whether or not to add and remove nodes or add or remove services based on that.
Yes.
So that's something else that you can look into.
Chaka will post a link to that in the docs if you can find it.
Okay. So the other recommendation is to go with the -1 and put auto scaling on the VM scale set.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy way to get going. Yep.
Yes, that is.
Okay.
Okay, right. Let's. Sorry, I'm trying to find where we were.
You guys can't see this, but every single time somebody asks a question, the entire stream of questions resets to the bottom, and so we're lost at sea and have to spend a lot of time scrolling. So apologies for these little gaps.
Application Insights integration with Service Fabric.
Got it.
Currently needs to go through a 2-step process. We install the NuGet packages in step 1 and wrap these with custom code to track requests and exceptions. My questions are, what's the roadmap for easy integration with Application Insights? Okay, so one thing we're actually going to do is that in our template, well, actually, it's always going to be that if you use your App Insights, you have to pull in the packages that you want to use. We are making sure that Application Insights itself is going to be.
Well, there's also event flow, which lets you decouple these things. So if you don't want to be coupled specifically to event or specifically to Apps Insights or Elk or whatever, right? Then you can use event flow, which it gives you still have to import some code and you still have to write some code, but you could write basically iLogger whatever, emit that as an event source, and then event flow picks it up. And you can do filters, and you can emit it to Application Insights. You could emit it to Elk. You could drop it on the floor. There's all sorts of filters and controls.
Yeah, but we are doing some work here to make it easier in our templates. And by default, when you do a Service Fabric template, it has the has App Insights incorporated as part of it all. So I'm pretty sure that I'll have to go back and check this one. That when you install some of our newer templates, you'll you won't have to necessarily pull in the NuGet packages. So it'll get pulled in for you. So let me check that. So effectively the roadmap for Applications Insights is that we're going to continue to make it easier for you to use that, use event flow as Matt talked about. And that will become the primary way effectively of pushing out all your data into for the visualization around these things. Right, is there a way to create the cluster nodes behind with a custom OS image?
So the answer to the question is yes. So before you go and create one, just make sure that you are equipped to do OS patching and other things with it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's recommended that you just use the Azure provided OS, because towards towards like the next few months, you would also have image-based patching coming there. Having said that, if you were to use a custom OS image,
I think someone needs to mute, please. And
okay, so then in your OS image, do not include.
Taco, you're in the meeting. There you go. We got it. Okay. No, we didn't.
My computer is starting.
This is a very nice guitar serenade.
Yeah, this is good taste to.
Whoever is playing your music, can you please not play music? So yes, you can do your own images.
No, one second. I have to complete my answer.
Okay.
Okay. So in your image, do not put service fabric bits. So other than that, you can bring your OS image.
Yes. Okay, can we stop active garbage collection? Do not deactivate an actor by giving it a scan time of big value. In these cases, calling a method on an actor that returns immediately, starting a long-running thread, and then the actor runs for a long time.
I think, Mark, I think you guys got muted for some reason. Let's see.
Did I? Participant actions.
Chaco, you should mute. And the room got me. Okay, I've unmuted you now. Mark, can you say something? Okay, you're still muted. Jeez.
I think you guys are good. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Matt, I think you might have to try and rejoin. We can't hear anything.
There, how about now?
Right. Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So the question was on actors and preventing garbage collection, and the thing that I was saying was that if the actor method is still running, then you won't get garbage collected for the duration of that operation. But based on your earlier question, I'm worried you've created some other task and forked it off under the hood without telling the actor model. So you're going outside that single-threaded pattern, and then that's when a lot of these problems start to come in. So I would, instead of trying to play with the collection timer and all that stuff, I would just have that async operation take as long as it takes.
Okay, let's move on to. Can you think of the next question? Is.
Marco, if you're in the room, can you maybe?
Yeah. How many resources are required for system services running on the primary nodes? I.e., memory or core count. In this case, it matters because it's mostly stateless services that will be used in our scenario. Is it reasonable to run intensive computation on the same nodes as the system services? So that's Peter's question.
Yes.
Okay. So one, we do not really come out and talk about our system services memory and core count, only because of the fact that depending on the usages of the cluster itself, what in terms of number of services running and number of calls you're making to the naming services and so forth, the system services may end up using more memory at that point.
But they're generally fairly low.
Yeah.
Yes.
In general, if you run an empty cluster,
and you look at
you would
CPU.
see that the CPU is very, very, very low.
Yes.
We would not recommend you run the primary node type to be a partial node. Always have at least a single core on it. Is it reasonable for you to run intensive computation on the same node as system services? Yes, you can. I think you should measure it and see that as the throughput is acceptable.
Yes. Yeah, the system services don't take a lot of processing.
Yeah,
and they don't take a lot of memory.
They don't do much unless there's something crazy happening in the cluster. So if there's failures, if there's an upgrade going on, if there's a lot of services being created and destroyed, that's when the system services end up hot and end up using more resources. But it's when they're at rest, they're not doing much. They're not in the flow of pretty much anything that happens in the cluster. So I think that you should probably do some thorough load testing. And the way that you would do it is you spin up your workload, you have your workload being hot and busy, and then you do something complicated like a bunch of upgrades at the same time, right? And then you make sure that even while there's that upgrade going on or there's a bunch of failures and chaos is running, that you don't see the performance or behavior of the system services degrade because of your work that's going on. But if you've done that, then there's no real problem with running your workloads on the same machines as the system services. We just recommend it because it makes things more predictable, right? The workloads are segregated. The system services have their resources and your services have their resources. And that way, it's more easy to predict what's going to happen, and you don't have to worry about that interaction.
Okay, let's try and get through some of these.
Peter's question. So Peter is asking a question. Docs mentioned bronze durability is recommended for stateless workloads. Does that mean I do not have to run manually the call remove service fabric node state onto scaling? So a couple of things when I wrote that doc. So one, the durability itself, we talked about silver durability and bronze durability. Silver durability comes with responsibilities like I've listed in that doc. So one of those things, which reason why I said that on the non-primary node types, when you're running stateless workloads, just use bronze because that actually is the fastest way to scale in and scale out. Anything else is going to slow you down. Yes, for some months, maybe a month or two, you will still need to call remove node state. But we are actually putting in a feature in our RP, which will periodically call this node state remove on your behalf. So till then, yes, you would have to do that. The only downside to not doing it is because you may get some queries from FM which are wrong. There isn't anything in terms of money or cost for you to leave it alone.
Okay. Let's keep going.
It's a point in time statement.
Yes. Okay. The question about on-premise using express route.
He was just commenting on the previous thing.
All right.
What's the preferred way to add node types to a cluster? Modifying ARM template seems to be the best practice. So the best way to add a node type is to use the new PowerShell module which we give you. That actually is the best way to do it.
Got it.
And it's not complex. It actually is a one command. So that should just work. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
So Joe, your answer is use PowerShell, and then soon you'll have a CLI command coming as well.
Okay.
So down to the.
There's a code.
I'm not sure about that code.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means. A code. We're going to skip past that one.
Yeah, I think I should probably put that one as another GitHub issue, and we'll dig into it. I think that this was your response to the earlier one.
Sure, I'll put this as a GitHub sample.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The default parameters to get added to publish profile for an upgrade are failure action rollback. False equals true. What does false true mean?
So So the force, I think, is just getting passed into the PowerShell under the hood, and that's the other thing that it might be. I'd have to go look to see what they've actually turned this into. They could be setting some of the timers to a fairly low value, or making sure it's gonna force the upgrade through, even if it causes some sort of outage. So that's something that we can figure out and get back to you on.
Okay, the one on containers. You have to realize that with containers at the moment, there is still an issue that we're working through with the Windows side, where you can't call localhost on a container. It has to have an actual IP address in order for container to work through the local NAT. So one of the things that we still have to work through is on the local machine. If you actually want to do any form of connection to local containers, you have to actually use the IP address of the machine itself rather than local host. So maybe that's what you're running into, which is effectively a bug inside Windows containers. which we actually have got them to fix in an upcoming release of Windows 10 when it comes out. Oh, sorry, Windows Server when it comes out. I believe it's for September timeframe.
Yeah, the question there is specifically around actually accessing externally. So I have an application running within this container. I can access that from a local machine, just the container. But when I publish that into a cluster, I don't seem to be able to go through all the way to the actual container.
Have you opened up the port on the load balancer, Azure load balancer? You have, and then when you deploy the container, you have to make sure that the container has a port that's opened inside the container. So the container exposes inside the Docker file. It goes port 80 is exposed to the container.
Okay, I have a look at that.
Yeah, it might be just not exposing the port correctly.
Yeah, so in the Docker file, you have to say port 80 on the host gets port mapped to port 8080 say inside the container, and then when you deploy the container, it opens up that maps that port through to the host. You then have to do one more step, and that is in the manifest file for the application service that gets deployed. You just have to say and tell Service Fabric this is the port to look for on the host, and then open up the port on the Azure Load Balancer. We're actually making these steps all a lot easier in the upcoming release, but there's 3 stages. Open the Azure Load Balancing port, put an entry in the service manifest, map a port from the host to the underlying container, and then you'll be able to see it all. I'll post a sample. If you go and look inside our quick start samples on Azure, there's an example of how you run a container.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Thank you very much.
I'll answer Ivan's questions quickly. I don't know when there's going to be a conference, but your question on seed nodes are basically correct. You'd have to bring back in the new ones, and you'd also have to do a configuration to tell the remainder that the new ones exist and what their addresses are. Typically, we don't really recommend FQDNs, but you could do that. Let's see here. Is there a single SF clustering? Oh, we did that one.
The cluster comprises of primary and secondary node types. The primary is C and is used by just.
If the primary nodes die, do we lose everything? Yeah, that's also where the seed nodes are so you'd lose the whole cluster too. So that's why we typically recommend that there's at least 5 of the primary node type where the system services run. For more reliable clusters, you could even go to 7 or 9, and the system services would scale up to that so that they don't fall down.
Mostly, this should be transparent to you.
Yep.
Yes. I mean.
Yeah. Don't think about seed nodes. Basically, just look at the right reliability levels, and then that should detect the number name.
Okay, I really want to store secrets in Key Vault and have them accessed through the environment variables from the application running inside the container. The Service Fabric application parameters, you can do cipher encryption of the Key Vault, but I can't figure out a way to use those parameters with my Docker container application code.
What you should be able to do is you should be able to take the application parameter and stick it into an environment variable. And then the trick is that I think we expect the code to do the decryption. And what you would be seeing in that case is the encrypted value inside the Docker container.
Yeah, but I think what you're trying to also do is manage a certificate with a container, it looks like. Because you need the cert in order to be able to access back to Key Vault. Yes?
Yeah, but again, the thing is that we don't do the decryption. So the only way you would have to do it is you'd have to give the container the access to the cert that it needed to decrypt things. That's the only way you would be able to get that to work today.
I think the upcoming release in 5.7 will help you significantly because now there's 2 things upcoming 5.7 release. We can actually manage certificates associated with the container if you need that. I think you were just talking about some general purpose code. This is a guest executable, isn't it?
It's a container.
Well, I don't know what code you have running inside it.
Today, it doesn't matter, right? They don't have access to our APIs, and it probably doesn't have access to the cert. So
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem for me. Inside the container, I don't have access. I don't have any of your APIs, so I can't decrypt I was hoping that your code would kind of like you get passing the parameter, like if you took the parameter and set it to an environment variable, if it would decrypt it and give the environment variable it decrypted, so it had to have access then within the container.
Yeah, you'll have to, in the 5.7 release, we can actually run our hosted code inside a container.
Yeah, you'd still have to give it access to the cert though. So you're still going to have that problem. The API will be there, but you'll still need to figure out how to get the decrypted cert available.
But also in our 5.7 release, we have access to certs that you can associate with the container.
Sure.
So I think this problem will always be solved for you in the release that comes out in about 2 weeks.
Yes. Hi, we're planning to use the Azure API management, but things are on-prem. What is the best way to connect to it? It really depends upon the scenario and what the other load balancing characteristics are. The reverse proxy might not be a bad idea. It's built in. You could also use Azure API management to point down to the on-prem environment through something like ExpressRoute. But that's a tricky one. There's a lot of different options.
Yeah, most of the API management was assuming that you include API management inside your own VNet.
Yeah. Absence, we did the absence sets one somehow. Okay. So we did that one. Apollo talks about absence sites. That. Supplying configuration overrides during new service fabric service. Nick, we're thinking about how to do that. The trick is that we'd still want to roll them out as a rolling upgrade. Otherwise, they're not safe and they have a chance to stamp on things, and that's no good. So that's something that we were looking into, but we haven't figured out a good design for it yet because we want to make it like an update, but we want it to be safe. We had asked another question.
We asked about the API management again.
And I think we've got it now.
But I mean, the API management has a bit of VNet connectivity to it, so it's not that straightforward. It's not really designed to connect to an on-premise cluster.
Yeah. And I got Ivan's, and I was not scrolling fast enough. So let's see here.
No, so you want to repost requests.
Yeah. But it is, you'd have to bring back the nodes, and then if they look like exactly the same nodes, then you're okay for the most part. But typically what you'd end up doing is reconfiguring the existing ones. Bringing back the ones that went down is the best way, usually. Can we expose REST endpoint through service bus relay? I mean, you could. I haven't personally tried it, but you could give that a shot. We have another request for PubSub inside of Service Fabric. We do not have anything in the pipeline for that today. And on-prem, I've seen RabbitMQ as a messaging bus. Service Bus runs on-prem, so that's another option.
Or we point to Paolo's example.
Yep, of using the existing one.
Yes.
What example was that? I'm sorry.
Paolo can post his link to a listener for Service Bus.
I was looking at Kafka, and I wasn't sure if I'd go that route or not.
That's another option. You also asked about targeting .NET Core. That's probably going to show up in the next few months.
Okay.
As well.
.NET Core we plan to have available for the September release. It'll be .NET Standard 2.0, of which kind of .NET Core is part of that. So we're targeting for the September release that you can build against .NET Core for both Windows and Linux and have the symmetry between them all.
There was a question about when's it a bad idea to use Service Fabric? No, .NET Core makes total sense. MVC is going to be a little, well, if they're .NET Core, then you're fine. It really is about, if you only had, I'd say if you had a simple web service, if it's Bob's Bait Shop and it's a single page app and that's it, and your scale requirements are not going to be so great, then I wouldn't use Service Fabric. We're probably overkill. But if you've got a bunch of other applications that you want to run in the same environment, if you've got other stateful services, if you've got a lot of complex computation stuff, if it's like a tier 1 business mission critical, site, and there's a lot of other things associated with it, then typically Service Fabric is more useful. If it's pretty much a standalone website and it works well today on just using, a simple database behind it, then we might be overkill.
Yeah, and that's like what I was trying to do is get a framework of what I have currently and what I'm moving towards, and I'm trying to move as much towards the microservice approach as possible, and use Service Fabric as a platform as a service. And I'm looking at, okay, I've got existing MVC .NET 4.6 apps. I've got some old ASPX apps. I've got some single page apps.
Some of those we see people just containerize and shove into Service Fabric just to get one unified environment, and that's another.
When you containerize it, my problem with containerizing it is that I'm going to have to support the OS underneath it then, right? Because I have to support the OS because you guys don't have IIS, right?
Well, but I mean you're going to have to support the OS in terms of the VM OS anyway today, right? I mean. Yeah, you're right. You have to now you have containerization as another step. So I was just mentioning that's another thing we've seen people do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get confused when they hear microservices. I replace that with micro applications.
Yep.
People think just services. They just think of web services and not use the applications. So, okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't going off on that.
Yeah, no, it's not. We've seen everybody run everything. So it's just a matter of if it ends up being worth it. If it's a simple site or if it's not, if that's the only thing, then less so.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want just to stick with IIS app service, maybe the better choice.
Yeah, it depends.
You know, maybe that's the way to go instead.
So one quick follow-up on that is, like, when we're looking at moving these guys over, the question is, why would you choose a .NET Core microservice versus a stateless microservice when hosting a type of application like that?
Well, you mean ASP.NET versus not, or what do you mean?
No, I'm talking about Service Fabric project type inside of Visual Studio. If I use a stateless service versus a .NET Core service.
It's just whether or not it's targeting .NET Core today. There's not a lot in it's just our APIs aren't fully .NET standard compliant yet, and that's on us to go fix.
Yes.
Okay. So there's not much advantage or disadvantage to choosing.
No, it's really your choice. And then we want to eliminate that distinction by just making everything in our stack .NET Core or .NET Standard compliant.
Yeah.
Oh, so then the .NET Core will go away and you'll just have the stateless.
Yeah, those will just be services.
Awesome. Thank you much.
That's coming soon. Right.
Okay.
When using an NSG in Azure and I lock down 1900 TCP port, my IP address is...
The Azure portal won't show the nodes. Sure. How do I...
No, actually, that is not true. So
yeah.
as long as there's an outbound connection, if you're not blocked outbound connection for NSG, they will all show up.
But that might have been a historic statement.
Yeah, this may have been a historical statement. So try it now. It works.
Yeah, you might be blocking all outbound connections from the cluster, though, and that would cause what you're seeing.
You do have to make sure you're on the latest releases for that one, though. Yes, in the last 2, don't you?
2-3 months. Sorry. So
yes.
I believe I was on the latest release, and actually, I mean, the cluster works fine. Everything works fine. It's just when you go and click on the Azure Fabric thing where it lists out the nodes, it's like Azure can't connect now and list out what nodes are.
Is this the Explorer? Yeah, are you talking about the Explorer?
Yeah.
The portal will fine. Portal should work just fine. But
are you talking about the Explorer or the portal?
In the portal. No, just in the portal. Explorer works fine. Because I'm opening the NSG I have it open to my IP, so Explorer's working fine.
It feels like something else is getting blocked because the portal doesn't use 19,000.
Yeah.
Post a GitHub issue.
Yeah.
Please post a GitHub issue.
Yeah, we'll dig into that one.
And then also, if possible, put the NSG rules in it without giving away any other secrets on it.
Yeah, we made sure that everything that was outbound could be connected to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you click in the portal and you click on the Fabric, what happens is it usually lists out nodes, and if I allow anyone to connect to 1900, and actually I think you even have an FAQ in the diagnostics in Azure, but it doesn't say what IP to allow, for Azure to connect to it. I don't know. It's just not listing it.
Yeah, let's find the issue and let's keep going. Greg asked a question about scheduling things. Yeah, today you'd have to write another little service that did the scheduling yourself, where it created and deleted the service on the calendar schedule that you wanted. You could also just have it running continuously and then say, if today's date is Thursday.
That's exactly what we've started writing. We're actually wrapping some other .NET. There's a scheduling software freeware out there. We're just going to wrap it and drop it as a DLL. But I was wondering if that's the best approach or if there's anything else.
That's the best way to do it right now. Yeah, that's just the best way to do it right now.
Alrighty, thank you.
Writing those other little scheduler managers is a pretty common thing that we see people doing.
Yeah, I was hoping there'd be some sort of reusable. Is there any place where if anyone was to write a microservice, they could post it up and other people could take it as freeware?
I mean, not today, but we're working on thinking about that.
We're looking at that, but today is mostly we have to talk to people about sharing GitHub code. But that is something like a package manager you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Package manager is a frequent request, and we're looking at that actually.
We're running a little short on time, but I'm going to try and crunch through a few more of these. So, Ashu asked about configuring proxy and things with regard to case sensitivity. I don't know that we've heard that one before, but that's a good question. We should take that one back.
Most people be careful. They run into the fact that naming servers is case sensitive. So if you get in case sensitive,
this question. Is one is case sensitive and he wants it to be case insensitive.
I know.
Okay.
It's case sensitive. We're not going to be able to change it. It's a breaking change.
Yeah, that'd be a whole bunch of things.
Well, this was an offer that came from you guys on a GitHub. We posted it on GitHub, and the reply came is like, "How about this solution? Will that serve your purpose?" Within the cluster is no longer an issue. It's just a reverse proxy.
Yes, and so I don't know that we have that configuration planned, but that is something that we can look into.
Yes,
okay,
that's
thanks.
the feature.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
All
Thank
right.
you.
How can we achieve staging per slot deployment? So the way Rekashar that we normally say you do that is you have either different clusters, or you use one cluster with placement constraints to segment it. So you have some nodes that are kind of your staging and some that are your production. Or
No, don't do that. Don't mix your production and staging.
Either way. But yeah, just separate the clusters is usually
two separate ones.
Two separate clusters: staging cluster, production cluster. That's it.
Typically. Okay. And
I am aware that call context custom handlers, old school front-end moving, can be ejected into the service fabric remoting by writing some custom code in the service fabric communication list. Now, it works for regular, reliable services.
Yeah, can you do that?
Be extended for an active service?
I think the whole transport customization is coming for the actor service model. I don't know when it's showing up, but that is something that we're looking at doing.
Yes.
There is a very long question here.
Not now. We are doing work on making sure that you can customize the mechanism, or the messaging on that side actors as well, or at least get a hold of the active proxy calls.
Okay. Jamie asked a question about DNS not working sometimes for containers. I'm not aware of any particular limitation there. This is another good candidate for an issue, so that we can figure out what's going on in this environment and why it isn't working. Especially if DNS is working for some services but not others, then that's really surprising.
One thing to be aware of on DNS is you need to make sure you have a port. So you just do, you have to do DNS port.
Today there has to be some port, but
that's what I'm experiencing. I'm having to add a port when the container really doesn't even have a port exposed on it, just so that DNS works inside the container, so I can talk to another service.
Yeah, I think that's a combination of a networking issue and a limit on our side. And I know that we're fixing our part.
Well, you need a port right now. That's all.
I know, and I know we're fixing that so that you don't require a port. You can still give something a DNS name and find it. So, but I don't know when that's landing. I think it's in 5.7, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's because the service I have really doesn't have anything it's listening for, but yet it does connect out to another service. So it's like I put this arbitrary configuration on there that's not even really true.
And the situation is that until you do that, we don't configure DNS correctly. Yeah. So those are the two situations. But I know that we're fixing that.
Okay, that is something that's going to pick. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's going to get fixed.
We're doing tons of work on containers.
Okay. And let's see here.
Mostly because we're moving lots of our own workloads inside Microsoft onto containers.
Yeah. Correlating ETW log entries across nodes. Precise timestamp does not. Yeah, we don't do anything around time. How can you get reliable timestamps? You basically can't get reliable timestamps. That is the thing that's really hard to do. We recommend immediately dumping those ETW logs into some other log correlation or log, string searching, like, Elk or Splunk, and then just searching on text. Timestamps that are really not going to be the best way to correlate things. You're going to want to look for correlation tokens or stamping GUIDs or things like that, so that you can flow that token through in an associated order that way. Time is going to be not the best. Recommendations how to set up a single cluster across multiple regions. Soon we will be publishing, hopefully, a template that shows you how to do that. If you have that need in the meantime, ping me, and I can add you to a GitHub repo, and we can collaborate to make sure that it works generally. Chaco asked a question. Good. A better way of handling incoming questions. Yeah, Peter, we know the questions are a little rough. We'll figure this out. Usually we're a little better staffed, and I couldn't even join on my laptop because of some other.
There's a common portal where all the videos for these Q&As are dumped. Yes, they're all on a YouTube channel called Service Fabric, and you can find them all there. And they're all there. Yep. Plus, by the way, there's lots of videos we published at Build as well. So go back and look for Build videos. We're trying to. You may have just noticed that one of the other things we've done is we've updated our docs recently. So our docs are in a pretty good shape.
And they've got more videos included with them.
We'd love for you to give some feedback on what you think about the new structure for our docs.
Yep. Last couple of questions. Writing a scheduler using an actor that then launches a service that is a service fabric Docker container. Yeah, that is a perfectly fine pattern. Dynamic service creation and destruction based on some manager is something we see all the time. We'll have better examples and documentation for when you do that, but that is an absolutely great pattern. So keep going. And then Jean-Francois asks for dev environment, created one node service fabric cluster. It works, perform upgrade. Yeah, the upgrade is never going to complete because it's a single node. If you take it down, it goes unhealthy, and it doesn't like that. So can't be done safely. Yeah.
Yes, one node is really just for
even a 5-node dev cluster on one box. You won't be able to do upgrades of the underlying environment. You'd have to do the application.
He's doing the application.
Yeah.
He's doing application. Yeah, no dev cluster can be upgraded.
Can actors do long-running isolated tasks? Yep, but the downside is that when they're doing that long-running task, that's blocking all other requests on that actor object. So that's the single-threaded model. If you don't want that single-threadedness, then actors are not ideally the best place.
See, it's not the single-threaded. It's not the single-threadedness. It's just the problem is if you do it in a long-running call to an actor in actor proxy, nobody from outside can now cancel it.
Right. That's single-threaded. It's got you put a timer on it and have it exit itself. That's the only way to do it. You put a cancellation token on it, and you plumb that through.
Quite often what we see inside there is, Matt just said you have a timer that fires and then it calls back into that and then you cancel it.
But yeah, it is the single threadedness that's biting you because you can't accept any other calls until that one long running thing finishes.
But even the timers won't run. Even the timers won't run, right?
The timer inside the method. So you'd pass a timeout. You'd say a cancellation token or a run for 30 minutes as an int. And then after it isn't done after 30 minutes, it kills itself and the method returns, right? But there's no way to get another external call into that thing because of that single threadedness.
Okay, I think we're out of time. We'll see you next month. Maybe if people think so, we maybe have to try and schedule them
more
frequently if people think that's a good idea. Hopefully you find these interesting. Use GitHub issues frequently to post things to us. That's very important for us.
Yeah, we're happy to answer the more complicated questions here when possible, but sometimes the issues list is a really good way to engage with us for things that are more complicated, especially when we need to share code and look at designs and stuff like that. So we do encourage you to use that place. We'll make sure that that link gets sent out.
Okay, and hope thank you once again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for using Service Fabric. We appreciate it a lot. Please go and help the rest of the community.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.